Welcome to the Coach May Show. We winning, and do not apologize for it. Confidence, composure, class. The setback leads to the setup.
Welcome back to Win, the Coach May Show. We do not apologize for winning on this podcast. Winning's uncommon. Winning's uncomfortable. I want to encourage you to be uncommonly uncomfortable in how you live your life. Today, we're going to follow up on our last episode where we began talking about building a culture of champions. We talked about beliefs that drive behaviors, that drive results, reverse engineering that into developing your culture of champions and wanting to have an intentional culture built on principle rather than an incidental culture built on preference. There are 6 C's of leadership that you as a leader of your culture or of your team or of your organization or of your business have to understand. The first C, if you will, is connection. Proximity is power. You may have heard that before, but you have to be connected to your stakeholders. You have to be connected to your players. You have to be connected to your employees. Hear me on this. There is a huge difference between connecting with someone and communicating with someone. Understand that. And in connecting with your people, you have to be near them. You have to be with them. We're in 2026. 10 years ago in 2016, I probably communicated 75% less online than I do now. Or 75% more in person. Darren, I don't know which way I should articulate that, but than I do now. And that was just 10 years ago. I'm 50. That was when I was 40. Change happens fast in our society. Make sure that you're not connecting to your people just online, just on social media, just via email, just via Zoom, just via text, just via WhatsApp. Be deliberate in understanding that proximity, physical location, being as close to them as you can, will allow you to develop a powerful connection. The second C we just talked about is communication. Connection and communication are 2 different things. However, no one trusts a poor communicator. So communication at various points in your leadership journey will be one of the most important things that you develop. In person is always best, even during what we call courageous conversations, where there's conflict and there's going to be confrontation. The thing about communication is it's often assumed to have been done. Don't assume. Ensure that you're communicating. The third C, consistency. We just did a podcast not too long ago on consistency versus intensity. Consistency, I think, is more important than intensity, although both are needed. But it is the consistent adherence to your beliefs and your behaviors that will drive consistent results. You have to demonstrate the consistent adherence to your culture every day if you expect those that you work with to do the same. Courage is the fourth C. You got to face your fear. Courage is not the same thing as being fearless. Courage is acting in the face of fear. The fifth C is character. This is where you live a life of principle over preference, where you understand that discipline is doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done, regardless of how you feel. Character is you live to your standards regardless of your sobs, standards regardless of your sentiments, standards regardless of your sympathies, and standards regardless of the scores in your life. The last and sixth C is competence, your skill. You should always be leveling up in how you show up in that pursuit that you have towards success every day. Make no mistake about it. In sports, in business, and in life, talent matters. Develop your talent by developing your skill set. Let's expand on these just a little bit more. So let's go back to the first one, connection. We already said spend time together. Proximity is power. But you also need to make sure that you're sharing in each other's adversity. Do hard things together. Share in misery. Coaches, whether it's in conditioning, the weight room, when you can get to a point where your team loves to do hard things, you're going to be formidable. In business, if you can get to where your team attacks challenges with vigor because they've learned almost to become addicted to the hard, you're going to be very successful. Share in doing hard things. Share in adversity. Be available when somebody is vulnerable. This is two ways. As a leader, you need to make sure that you have availability during someone else's vulnerability. But also when you're going through some vulnerable times, what you'll see is that if you've been available for those that needed you in vulnerable times, they will be available for you during your vulnerable times. That's when true connection is made. Communication, diving a little bit deeper into the second C. We talked about, I actually, Darren, this morning, are you on Substack, by the way? I just got on Substack. Everybody needs to get on Substack. I really like it. I made a post from my devotional time this morning about one of the tenets of leadership is knowing when to hold your tongue and listen. So being a good communicator is not always just flapping your jaws. And the book of Proverbs, I'm not going to be able to recite this. It's in chapter 18. But a fool is one who can't wait to espouse their opinion rather than listening for the other person to finish theirs. So part of being a good communicator, thus being a good leader, is listening. Learning how to humbly hold your tongue, even if what the other person is saying is wrong or needs to, or could be argued against, or their statement could be improved upon. Maybe that's not your job to do. Again, I want to reiterate that people don't trust poor communicators. And if you're going to lead any kind of successful culture, trust is going to be at the forefront of that. Well, you develop trust by communicating honestly, transparently, and as I say, we're going to communicate early and often. I think that's important. Even if that changes as far as what you communicated changes, at least you're communicating. And remember, in communication, it's often assumed that it's been done. Don't assume. Ensure that people are communicated to. Third C, consistency. Consistency makes room for confidence to grow. I think that's important to understand. Consistency is more important than intensity. Both are needed, but consistency is the most important of those two. Be consistent in your energy, be consistent in your behaviors, and be consistent in how you hold others accountable to your culture's standards. Courage. It's not operating in the absence of fear. It's not trying to eliminate fear. It's operating in the presence of fear, regardless of fear. Courage does not equal and is not the same thing as being fearless. Understand that. Character. I had a guy tell me one time, coaches get hired for their competence, which is our last C, but fired for their character. I've lived that. I've been hired because I've won a lot of games, built a lot of strong cultures, helped a lot of players get to the next level, helped players get to the professional level. But I've also been fired for bylaw violations, which is a reflection on my character. Character will help you keep your position in leadership more than it will help you get your position in leadership. The surface level things that we like to put on a resume will help you get your position in leadership. It's your character that will help you keep that position of leadership. The standards in your program, those decisions and activities that lie between your beliefs and behaviors, will help form your people's character in your organization. And the last thing is competence. Again, competence will get you your job. Character will keep the job that you have. Competence will get you your leadership position. Character will keep it for you. It's your skill set. Competence is something that you should always be leveling up on. I want to be more and more competent as a coach, more and more competent as a business owner, as an executive, as a director. Be leveling up, whether that's professional development, continuing education. Don't become static in your competency as a leader. So once you develop your leadership style and rhythm in governing your culture, you need to understand where the landmines are. Now let's define a landmine for those of you who've never watched a military movie. A landmine is an explosive device that is underneath the surface. You can't see it. It's meant not to be detected. But if you step on it, it blows up. Okay? So where are those landmines in your culture that you can't necessarily see or detect, but you know they're there, so we need to be mindful of them and detect them regardless to make sure that we avoid them. These are called culture killers. Think of B, C, and D. B, blaming. C, complaining. D, becoming defensive. B, blaming. Victim mentality. This happened to me. What is this? I don't know. You're blaming it on something other than yourself. And if my players have heard me say one time, they've heard me say it 100 times, we don't have victims in our program. If my kids, Jason, Reagan, if they've heard me say that, hey, you're not a victim to your circumstances. They've heard me say it 1,000 times. When you blame a circumstance, other people, something that you could have controlled, something that you couldn't have controlled, regardless, you're becoming a victim. That's a culture killer. Things happen for you, not to you. When you can look at adversity as something that's happening for you in your development rather than to you, you take the personal out of it. Oh, wow, okay, this is tough. This is disappointing, but I'm going to reframe it into the next best opportunity, and long term, it's probably going to make our culture stronger. When you hide from responsibility, it's usually because you're blaming somebody or something for a failure or a lack of achievement. So when you blame, be careful. That's also a way of running from responsibility. C, complaining. When you complain, you become a problem-centric thinker rather than a solution-based thinker. When you think in those terms, you become a lazy thinker. Lazy thinkers are lazy leaders. When you complain, you zap the energy away from others. So rather than empowering others, Dan, I'm going to make a word up here. You demotivate them. Is that a word? I think Darren's going to look it up.
Sounds like a word to me.
But, you want to empower others. But when you're complaining about things, coaches, you're complaining about lack of funds, budget, you're not empowering others. No one comes to our games. Well, and guess what? You're not empowering them to come to games by complaining about them not coming to games. Leaders, complaining about results. You're not empowering your sales team to get better results by complaining about the lack of results. D, becoming defensive. When you take criticism, critique, and coaching personal, you become defensive. When you're defensive, that screams to the outside world that you're worried about perception. Any strong, formidable culture, whether in sports or business, has to get to the point where they don't worry about what others think. When you worry about the perception of others, you'll die. No, I said that wrong, Darren. When you live by the perception of others, you'll die by their opinions. At some point in time, you've got to believe that your beliefs and your behaviors are going to drive the results that you want, even if the outside world doesn't see it. So don't get defensive when adversity hits. Keep driving forward. When you get defensive, it blocks your growth of your culture. It blocks the growth of your organization. So, we talked about the 6 C's. We talked about connection, communication, consistency, courage, character, and competence. And we talked about the culture killers, the B's, blaming, the C's, complaining, the D's, getting defensive, that can kill your culture. Thank you for joining us on this episode as we continue to discuss how to build a culture of champions in your organization. If you haven't been to CoachMays.com and looked at maybe having a discovery call about my personal performance coaching, do it. It takes 20 minutes. You'll be better for it. I'll be better for it. You can do that on CoachMays.com, book a discovery call, and we'll hop on a phone, hop on a Zoom, and we'll talk about my mental performance coaching with individuals and the impact that it's making, not only on myself, but more importantly on others. Thank you, and have a great day, and thank you for tuning in to Win the Coach Mays Show, where we surely will never, ever apologize for winning.
We win it. And do not apologize for it. Covered it.